Amelia Mason lived alone in a small wooden hut deep in the Montana mountains. She had been there for 3 years now. After leaving the army, she wanted to be far away from people. The scars on her face and the memories in her mind made it hard to be around others. The winter this year came early and hit hard. For 6 days now, a terrible blizzard had covered everything in white. The wind howled like an angry beast. Snow piled higher than the windows. Amelia sat by her fireplace, reading an old book by the light of oil lamps. The electricity had gone out 2 days ago. She had enough food stored to last months. Her water came from melted snow. The hut was small but warm, with thick walls and a strong roof. Amelia was used to being alone, especially during these long winters. She had her books, her radio that sometimes worked, and her thoughts. That night, as the storm raged outside, Amelia heard a strange sound above the howling wind. At first she thought it was just a tree breaking under the weight of snow. But then came a bright flash of light. It lit up her entire hut for a second, bright as day. The light was blue and purple, not like lightning at all. Amelia put down her book and went to the window. She wiped away the frost and looked outside. The storm made it hard to see anything, but somewhere in the distance, through the trees and snow, she saw more flashes of strange light. Then came a noise, a loud crash like something very big had fallen from the sky. The ground shook. Books fell from shelves. Amelia's coffee mug slid off the table and broke on the floor. "What on earth?" she whispered to herself. Her first thought was a plane crash. Maybe the storm had brought down a small aircraft. If so, someone might need help. Amelia quickly put on her thick winter clothes, heavy boots, 2 pairs of pants, 3 layers on top, a big coat, gloves, and a hat that covered most of her face except her eyes. She grabbed her emergency kit and was about to open the door when she heard it. Knocking. No, more like pounding. Something or someone was hitting her door hard and fast. Amelia froze. Her hand went to the knife she always kept at her belt, a habit from her army days. The pounding continued, more desperate now. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer, just more pounding. Slowly, Amelia unlocked the door. The wind immediately pushed it open with great force. Snow blew in like white dust, and along with it something fell into her hut. At first, in the dim light and swirling snow, Amelia couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. The figure on her floor was person-shaped, but wrong somehow. It took her a few seconds to realize what she was looking at. It wasn't human. The creature was thin and about the size of a small woman. Its skin was a light purple color that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Strange marks covered its body, lines and swirls that pulsed with light. But most shocking were the eyes. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on a face that was almost, but not quite, human. Amelia stood frozen, her mind struggling to accept what she was seeing. The creature looked up at her, and its 3 eyes went wide with what could only be described as pure terror. It made a sound, high and musical, but clearly afraid. It tried to move away from Amelia, pushing itself backward across the floor until it hit the wall. One of its hands pressed against its side, where Amelia now noticed a dark liquid seeping between its fingers. It was hurt. Despite her shock, Amelia's training kicked in. Someone was injured in her home. Human or not, they needed help. She slowly raised both hands to show she had no weapons. "It's okay," she said softly, knowing the creature probably couldn't understand her words, but might understand her tone. "I won't hurt you." The alien, because what else could it be, trembled and made more musical sounds. It looked from Amelia to the still open door where the blizzard raged. For a moment it seemed to be considering going back out into the storm, but then strange lights appeared in the distance. Bright beams cutting through the snow, searching. The alien saw them too. Its fear seemed to double. It looked at Amelia, then at the lights, then back to Amelia. It was afraid of her, but whatever was out there scared it even more. Amelia moved slowly to close the door, shutting out the storm and the mysterious lights. The alien watched her every move. Its breathing was fast and shallow. The wound on its side continued to bleed a strange, glowing purple liquid. "You're hurt," Amelia said, pointing to the wound. "I can help." She moved very slowly toward her medical kit. The alien pressed itself harder against the wall but didn't try to run. Amelia opened the kit where the alien could see it, taking out bandages and antiseptic. "I'm going to help you," she said, miming cleaning and bandaging a wound on her own arm. The alien watched, its 3 eyes blinking at different times. Slowly, very slowly, it moved its hand away from its wound. It was a deep cut, about 6 inches long on its side. Amelia inched forward, stopping whenever the alien seemed too afraid. It took nearly 20 minutes for her to get close enough to help. The whole time, strange lights continued to flash outside, and once they heard a sound like metal scraping against trees. Finally, Amelia was able to clean and bandage the wound. The alien's skin felt smooth and warm under her fingers, almost like silk. The blood was thicker than human blood and had a sweet smell like flowers. When she finished, Amelia backed away, giving the creature space. They stared at each other across the room, human and alien, both seemingly unable to believe what was happening. Outside, the storm continued to rage. The strange lights moved through the trees, coming closer, then moving away again. Something was searching out there, hunting. The alien's gaze moved to the window, watching the lights with obvious fear. Then it looked back at Amelia. In its strange, three-eyed face, she saw something change. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. They were both in danger now. Whatever had chased this creature to Earth, to this remote hut in the middle of a blizzard, was still out there. And it was coming closer. Amelia had no idea what would happen next. But as she sat across from the wounded alien visitor, one thing was clear. Her lonely, quiet life in the mountains had just become much more complicated. The night passed slowly. Amelia did not sleep. She sat in her chair, watching the alien who now lay curled on her couch under a thick blanket. The strange being slept fitfully, making soft musical sounds that might have been words or maybe just noises of pain. Morning came, but with the blizzard still raging, little light filtered through the windows. Amelia made coffee on her wood stove. The smell woke the alien, who sat up quickly, then winced from the pain of its wound. Morning, Amelia said, though she knew the word meant nothing to her visitor. Coffee? The alien watched with all three eyes as Amelia poured the dark liquid into a cup. When she offered it, the alien sniffed cautiously, then turned away. Not a coffee drinker, then. Amelia needed to communicate with this strange guest. She found an old notebook and a pencil. Sitting on the floor, a safe distance from the alien, she began to draw. First, she drew a simple picture of her hut. Then she added a stick figure inside it, herself. She pointed to the figure, then to herself. Amelia, she said, tapping her chest. The alien watched carefully. It seemed to understand. With slow movements, it pointed to itself and made a musical sound. Lisara. At least that's how it sounded to Amelia. Lisara, Amelia repeated. Though she couldn't make the sound exactly right, the alien, Lisara, nodded slightly. Progress. Amelia drew more pictures. The crashed object she had heard last night. A question mark. Lisara took the pencil. Her hands had long, thin fingers with an extra joint. She drew a teardrop-shaped craft. Then she drew larger, angular shapes around it. Her hand trembled as she drew these. Over the next few hours, through pictures and gestures, a story emerged. Lisara was a scientist from a world far away. Her ship had been attacked by another species. The angular shapes she drew with such fear. She had escaped in a small pod, which crashed on Earth during the blizzard. The pursuers, who Lisara called something that sounded like void hunters when she pointed to her drawings, had followed her. They were the source of the strange lights outside. Amelia tried to ask why they were hunting Lisara. The alien drew what looked like a small disc or device. She pointed to her head, then made a gesture like something exploding. Whatever knowledge she had, these void hunters wanted it badly. As they worked to understand each other, Lisara began to relax slightly. She examined the hut with growing interest. When she saw Amelia's bookshelf, her three eyes widened. She pointed to the books, then to herself, making a gesture like opening pages. You have books where you come from? Amelia asked, miming reading. Lisara nodded eagerly. She drew a picture of what looked like floating buildings filled with books. A library, maybe. She seemed excited when talking about knowledge and learning, but her fear returned whenever they heard sounds from outside. The storm had weakened slightly, and the strange searching lights had not appeared since morning. But something was out there, waiting. Around midday, Amelia checked Lisara's wound. It was healing strangely fast. The edges of the cut were already closing, the skin knitting together with a faint glow. Lisara watched Amelia's surprised expression and made a sound that might have been a laugh. Amelia decided to show Lisara more about humans. She brought out an old atlas showing maps of Earth. Lysara studied them with great interest. She pointed to different continents, making questioning sounds. When Amelia showed her pictures of cities, Lysara's reaction was odd. She seemed alarmed by images of New York and Tokyo. She pointed to the buildings, then to the sky, then made a cutting motion across her throat. It took some time for Amelia to understand. Apparently, Lysara's people knew something about Earth. In their records, humans were considered dangerous, violent, a species to be avoided. Amelia couldn't really argue with that assessment. She pointed to herself, then made peaceful gestures. Not all of us, she tried to communicate. Not me. Lysara studied Amelia's face for a long moment. Then she reached out slowly and touched the scar that ran from Amelia's left temple to her jaw, a souvenir from her last deployment. Amelia flinched but allowed the touch. Lysara made a sad sound. She drew a picture of what might have been soldiers fighting. Then she pointed to Amelia's scar and tilted her head in question. Yes, Amelia admitted. I was a soldier once, Lysara drew again. This time figures holding hands in a circle. She pointed to herself and nodded firmly. Her people were peaceful, she seemed to say. They did not fight wars. As evening approached, Amelia began to prepare food. Lysara watched with interest as she cooked a simple stew on the wood stove. When offered a bowl, the alien sniffed it carefully before taking a small taste. Her reaction was immediate. She spat it out and made a sound like bells being struck wrong. Amelia couldn't help but laugh. Not to your taste? She offered different foods, an apple, some bread, nuts. Lysara tried each cautiously. She seemed able to eat the apple and nuts but refused the bread. As they ate their separate meals, a noise came from outside. A mechanical whirring sound, followed by heavy footsteps in the snow. Lysara froze, her food forgotten. Her markings, which had been glowing softly, dimmed suddenly as if she were trying to hide her light. Amelia moved quickly to the window. Through the swirling snow, she saw a tall figure moving near the trees. It was hard to make out details, but it wasn't human. It stood at least 7 feet tall with a body that seemed too angular, too rigid. It moved with mechanical precision, scanning the area systematically, a void hunter. Amelia ducked back from the window. Lysara was pressed against the far wall, trembling. Her 3 eyes were wide with terror. Amelia put a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. She moved quietly to a trunk near her bed and opened it. Inside was a reminder of her past life, a military-grade rifle. She hadn't fired it in years, but she still cleaned it regularly out of habit. Lysara watched as Amelia checked the weapon. The alien's expression was a mix of fear and something else, perhaps surprised that this human was prepared to fight. The footsteps outside grew closer. Snow crunched under heavy feet. A bright light swept across the windows, a searchlight of some kind. Amelia and Lysara remained perfectly still, barely breathing. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the footsteps moved away. The light faded, but Amelia knew the hunter had not given up. It was just expanding its search area. When it seemed safe, Lysara drew quickly in the notebook. She sketched 3 of the angular figures, 3 hunters. She pointed outside and held up 3 fingers. Not just 1 threat, but 3. Amelia nodded her understanding. She pointed to Lysara, then to the crashed pod they had discussed earlier. A question. Was there something there the alien needed? Lysara drew the small disc again, the thing the hunters wanted. She nodded vigorously. Yes, it was still in her crashed pod, and it was clearly important. Amelia thought hard. They couldn't stay in the hut forever. Sooner or later, the hunters would find them. They needed to recover whatever was in that pod and then… What, run? Hide? Fight? She had no idea how to fight these creatures. She didn't even know what they were. But sitting and waiting wasn't an option. Amelia drew a simple map of the area around her hut, based on what Lysara had shown of where her pod had crashed. She pointed to the pod, then to the hut and mimed walking between them. Lysara shook her head. She pointed to the window where snow still fell heavily. Too dangerous, she seemed to say. Not because of the storm, but because of what waited out there. Amelia understood. But they needed a plan. She pointed to the map again, then to the sun and drew its setting. Night. They would go at night. Lysara considered this. Her markings pulsed with changing colors as she thought. Finally, she nodded slowly. Yes, night would be better. Darkness might hide them. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Amelia gathered supplies: rope, a compass, extra ammunition, food, medical supplies. Lisara watched and helped where she could, though many human objects were clearly strange to her. As the short winter day faded to darkness, they both knew the coming night would determine whether they lived or died. The hunt had begun and they were the prey. Night fell fully around 6 in the evening. The blizzard had weakened to steady snowfall. The wind still blew, but not with the force of previous days. The moon was hidden behind clouds, making the night very dark. Perfect for what they needed to do. Amelia and Lisara prepared to leave the safety of the hut. Amelia wore her warmest clothes and carried her rifle, a pistol, and a large hunting knife. She also wore a backpack with supplies. She tried to give Lisara warm clothes, but they didn't fit the alien's slim body well. Lisara accepted only a scarf, which she wrapped around her neck and lower face. Strangely, Lisara didn't seem bothered by the cold. When Amelia touched her arm questioningly and pointed to the snow outside, Lisara made a dismissive gesture. Perhaps her people were used to cold climates. Before they left, Amelia drew one more picture, a rough map of the area with the hut, the crash site as she understood it, and 3 X marks representing the hunters. She pointed to the map, then outside, raising her eyebrows in question. Lisara studied the drawing. She pointed to one area of the forest and made a low humming sound. Then she touched another area and made a different sound. She was telling Amelia where she had seen the hunters last. Amelia nodded. She pointed to herself, then to Lisara, and drew a line showing a path that would avoid those areas. Lisara understood. She took the pencil and adjusted the path slightly, then nodded. They had a plan. It wasn't much, but it was something. Carefully, Amelia opened the door. Cold air rushed in. The night was silent except for the soft fall of snow. No mechanical sounds. No searching lights. Not right now, at least. They stepped outside. The snow was deep, almost to Amelia's knees in places. She had snowshoes, but only one pair. Lisara, however, seemed to move easily through the snow. She was lighter than she looked, barely leaving prints. They moved slowly through the dark forest. Amelia led the way, using a small red light that would be harder to spot from a distance. The crashed pod was about a mile away according to their best guess. Not far, but dangerous terrain in the dark. Every few minutes they stopped to listen. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No animals moved. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the soft crunch of snow under Amelia's boots. After 20 minutes of careful movement, Lisara suddenly gripped Amelia's arm. She pointed to their left. At first, Amelia saw nothing. Then she caught it, a faint glow moving between distant trees. One of the hunters. They froze, not daring to move. The light moved slowly, methodically, searching in a grid pattern. It was still far enough away that they hadn't been spotted, but it was heading in their direction. Amelia pointed to a dense cluster of pines nearby. They moved toward it, seeking cover. Once hidden among the branches, they watched the approaching light. Now they could see the hunter clearly. It was tall and thin, with a body that seemed both mechanical and organic. Its head was elongated and featureless except for a bright light where eyes should be. It moved with perfect precision, each step exactly like the last. Lisara trembled beside Amelia. Her markings had dimmed to almost nothing, but a faint pulse still showed her fear. Amelia put a hand on her arm, trying to offer comfort. The hunter moved closer to their hiding place. 15 yards away. 10. 5. Amelia silently raised her rifle, ready if they were discovered. The hunter stopped directly in front of their hiding spot. Its head turned slowly, the light scanning the trees. For a terrible moment, Amelia was sure it had found them. But then some sound in the distance caught its attention. It turned and moved away, following whatever it had heard. They waited until it was well out of sight before moving again. Lisara pointed in the direction they needed to go, away from where the hunter had disappeared. They continued through the forest, moving even more carefully now. Twice more they had to hide as hunters passed nearby. Each time they barely avoided detection. Finally, they reached a small clearing. In the center, half buried in snow, was Lisara's escape pod. It was smaller than Amelia had expected, about the size of a small car. Its design was smooth and organic, like a teardrop made of metal. One side was badly damaged, torn open from the crash. Lisara moved quickly to the pod, her fear seemingly forgotten in her urgency. Amelia kept watch, rifle ready, scanning the dark forest for any sign of the hunters. Inside the pod, Lysara searched frantically. The interior was strange. No obvious controls, just smooth surfaces with pulsing lights. The alien woman pressed her hands to different sections, and parts of the pod responded, opening compartments or displaying symbols in the air. After a few minutes, Lysara made a soft sound of triumph. She pulled something from a hidden compartment, a disc about the size of a hockey puck, glowing with the same light as her skin markings. She held it carefully, reverently. Amelia motioned for her to hurry. They had been lucky so far, but luck never lasted. Lysara nodded. She pressed her hand to another part of the pod. A series of lights flashed rapidly and the pod's glow faded. She was shutting it down, or maybe wiping its memory. As they prepared to leave, a sound cut through the night, a high-pitched tone, like metal scraping on metal. Both of them turned toward it. At the edge of the clearing stood one of the Void Hunters. Its light was fixed directly on them. It made the sound again, not a warning, but a signal. It was calling the others. Amelia didn't hesitate. She raised her rifle and fired. The shot echoed through the forest. The hunter staggered but didn't fall. Where the bullet had struck, its body simply rearranged itself, the damage closing like water. "Run!" Amelia shouted, though she knew Lysara couldn't understand the word. But her intent was clear. They both turned and ran in the opposite direction from the hunter. Behind them, heavy footsteps pursued. The hunter was fast, too fast for something so large. Amelia fired again over her shoulder, not aiming, just trying to slow it down. They crashed through the snow-covered forest. Branches whipped at their faces. Roots hidden under snow tried to trip them. Lysara clutched the disc tightly to her chest as she ran. Another sound joined the pursuit, a second hunter approaching from their left. They were being surrounded. Amelia changed direction, pulling Lysara with her. They splashed through a half-frozen stream, the icy water soaking Amelia's boots. The hunters followed without hesitation. Whatever they were, machine, alien, or something in between, they were relentless. Amelia's mind raced. They couldn't outrun these things, and her weapon seemed useless. They needed another plan. She tried to orient herself. Where were they in relation to her hut? To the nearest road? Was there anywhere they could hide? Then she remembered. About half a mile to the east was an old mine shaft, a relic from when these mountains were still being prospected. She had explored it once, years ago. It was deep and had several tunnels branching off. It might offer shelter, or at least a defensible position. She tugged Lysara's arm and pointed east. The alien woman nodded, understanding they needed to change direction again. They turned, running up a steep slope. The exertion was exhausting. Amelia's lungs burned in the cold air. Behind them, the hunters continued to signal each other. The high-pitched tones echoed through the forest. They were coordinating, trying to cut off escape routes. At the top of the slope, Amelia paused to catch her breath and get her bearings. In the distance, she could see a third light moving rapidly through the trees, the final hunter joining the chase. Lysara made an urgent sound. She held out the disc, which was glowing brighter now. She pointed to it, then to the hunters, and made a chopping motion. The disc was what they wanted. It was the key to everything. Amelia nodded her understanding. Whatever was stored on that disc, it was valuable enough that these creatures had followed Lysara across space to get it. They needed to protect it at all costs. They continued east, moving as fast as the deep snow allowed. The old mine entrance was hidden behind a stand of pines. If Amelia's memory was correct, it would be marked by a collapsed wooden structure, the remains of a shed that once covered the entrance. After another 10 minutes of hard travel, she spotted it, dark wood poking through white snow. The mine entrance, they rushed toward it. The opening was small, partially collapsed over the decades. They would have to crawl to get inside. Amelia went first, brushing away snow and pulling aside broken boards. She slipped into the darkness, then turned to help Lysara. The alien woman was halfway in when a bright light washed over them. One of the hunters had found them. It stood 20 yards away, its featureless head focused on their position. It made that terrible signaling sound again. Lysara scrambled the rest of the way into the mine shaft. Amelia raised her rifle and fired repeatedly at the hunter. The bullet struck it, but did little damage. Still, It hesitated, assessing the threat. That hesitation gave Amelia the seconds she needed. She ducked into the mine shaft and began pushing the old boards and rocks across the entrance. It wouldn't hold the hunters for long, but it might slow them down. Inside, the mine shaft was pitch black. Amelia turned on her small light. The shaft extended deep into the mountain, rough-hewn walls disappearing into darkness. The air was cold and stale. Lysara stood close to Amelia, the disc in her hands giving off enough light to cast strange shadows on the rock walls. Outside, they could hear the hunters approaching the blocked entrance. The old mine shaft went deep into the mountain. Amelia and Lysara moved carefully through the darkness. Amelia's small light showed the way, casting long shadows on the rough rock walls. The passage was narrow in places. Sometimes they had to duck under low ceilings or climb over fallen rocks. Behind them, they could hear the hunters working to clear the blocked entrance. It wouldn't take them long to break through. "We need to find another way out," Amelia said. Though she knew Lysara couldn't understand her words, she mimed her meaning instead, pointing ahead and making walking motions with her fingers. Lysara nodded. She still held the disc tightly. Its soft glow had changed color, from purple to a deeper blue. The alien woman seemed worried about this change. They came to a place where the tunnel split in 3 directions. Amelia paused, unsure which way to go. She had explored this mine years ago but had never gone this deep. All 3 passages looked the same, dark, dusty, dangerous. Lysara solved the problem. She held the disc near each tunnel opening. When she moved it toward the rightmost passage, the disc's glow brightened slightly. Lysara pointed that way decisively. Amelia raised her eyebrows in question. How could the disc know which way to go? But she trusted Lysara's judgment. They took the right passage. The tunnel began to slope downward. The air grew colder and damper. Water dripped from the ceiling in places. The wall sparkled with minerals caught in Amelia's light beam. From far behind them came a crash and the sound of falling rocks. The hunters had broken through the entrance. The pursuit would soon continue. They moved faster now, sometimes almost running. The passage turned and twisted. In some places, it was wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. In others, they had to squeeze through narrow gaps. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they emerged into a large cavern. Amelia's light couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. The floor dropped away into darkness ahead of them. Lysara made a soft musical sound, surprise or wonder perhaps. She held up the disc. Its glow was strong now, illuminating more of the cavern than Amelia's light. In the expanded light, they could see strange crystals growing from the walls and ceiling. They were like nothing Amelia had ever seen, not quartz or amethyst or any mineral she knew. They pulsed with a faint inner light similar to Lysara's skin markings. Lysara approached one of the crystals. She held the disc near it and both began to glow more brightly. She turned to Amelia with all 3 eyes wide. She pointed to the disc, then to the crystals, and made a circular motion with her hand. Some connection existed between them. From the tunnel behind them came the sound of metal on stone. The hunters were getting closer. Amelia pointed to the crystals, then to the disc, and raised her hands in question. Could these strange minerals help them somehow? Lysara seemed to consider this. She looked at the disc, then at the largest crystal formation. She made a decision. Approaching the crystal, she pressed the disc against its surface. Light flowed between the 2 objects, pulsing and swirling. The disc seemed to be transferring something to the crystal. Data, energy, something Amelia couldn't understand. While this was happening, Amelia kept watch on the tunnel entrance. She could hear the hunters getting closer. Their mechanical footsteps echoed in the passage. Lysara worked quickly. The transfer continued for several minutes. Then she pulled the disc away from the crystal. Both still glowed, but now the crystal pulsed with patterns similar to those on the disc. Lysara turned to Amelia and made a braking motion with her hands. She pointed to the disc, then to the floor and mimed smashing something. "You want to destroy it?" Amelia asked, miming the action herself to confirm. Lysara nodded emphatically. She had copied the disc's contents to the crystal. Now she wanted to destroy the original so the hunters couldn't get it. Amelia understood. She took the disc and placed it on a flat rock. Then she used the butt of her rifle to smash it. The disc broke easily like thin glass. Its glow flickered and died. Lysara made a sound that might have been relief. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. A bright light suddenly flooded the cavern from the tunnel entrance. The first hunter had arrived. It stood silhouetted against the passage, its featureless head swiveling as it scanned the cavern. When it spotted them, it made that terrible signaling sound again. Amelia raised her rifle and fired. In the enclosed space, the shots were deafeningly loud. This time, her bullets seemed to have more effect. The hunter staggered backward, its body sparking where it was hit. Lysara grabbed Amelia's arm and pulled her toward the far side of the cavern. There had to be another way out. The cavern was too big, too natural to have only one entrance. They ran across the uneven floor, jumping over small crevices and ducking around crystal formations. Behind them, the hunter recovered and began to pursue. 2 more lights appeared in the tunnel, the other hunters joining the chase. At the far side of the cavern, they found what they were looking for, another passage leading away from the cavern. It was smaller than the one they had entered by, but big enough to pass through. They ducked into it just as energy beams of some kind hit the wall beside them. The hunters were shooting at them now. The beams left scorch marks on the rock and made the air smell like lightning. The new passage climbed steeply upward. They scrambled over loose rocks, pulling themselves up by handholds in the walls. The hunters would have a harder time following here. They were too large, too rigid for this tight, twisting route. After a difficult climb, they emerged into another, smaller cavern. This one had a strange feature, a pool of water in its center, perfectly still and black as ink. The crystals were here too, reflecting in the water's surface. Lysara approached the pool. She knelt beside it and touched the surface gently. Ripples spread outward, distorting the reflections. She looked up at Amelia and pointed to the water, then made a diving motion. "You want us to go in there?" Amelia asked incredulously. She couldn't see the bottom of the pool. It could be 5 feet deep or 500. Lysara nodded firmly. She pointed to the passage they had just climbed through, then to her ear. She could hear the hunters coming. Amelia hesitated. Swimming in an unknown underground pool seemed like a terrible idea, but facing those hunters again might be worse. Lysara made her decision first. She slipped into the water silently, barely causing a ripple. She floated for a moment, then turned to look expectantly at Amelia. With a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening, Amelia followed. The water was shockingly cold at first, but not as cold as she expected from an underground pool in winter. It almost seemed to warm around her, adjusting to her body temperature. More surprising was how the water glowed faintly where they disturbed it. The same light that pulsed in the crystals and in Lysara's skin markings now swirled around them in the water. Lysara pointed downward. There, at the bottom of the pool, was an opening, a underwater tunnel leading somewhere else. She wanted them to swim through it. Amelia took a deep breath, preparing to dive, but Lysara stopped her. The alien woman touched her own neck, then Amelia's. She mimed breathing underwater. Amelia shook her head in confusion. She couldn't breathe underwater. She was human, not whatever Lysara was. Lysara seemed frustrated by the limitation. She thought for a moment, then pointed to herself, then to the tunnel and held up one finger. Then she pointed to the cavern entrance and held up 3 fingers. 1 swimmer, 3 hunters. She wanted to go alone. Draw the hunters away somehow while Amelia escaped another way. Amelia shook her head firmly. No, they would stay together. She pointed to both of them, then to the underwater tunnel, and mimed holding her breath. She could try to swim it, holding her breath as long as possible. Lysara didn't look convinced, but they were running out of time. From the passage came the sounds of the hunters, closer now. They both took deep breaths and dove beneath the surface. The underwater tunnel was wide enough for them to swim side by side. The strange glowing water provided enough light to see by. Amelia kicked hard, pulling herself along with strong strokes. The tunnel curved gently downward, then up again. Her lungs began to burn. How much farther? Beside her, Lysara swam with easy grace. She could clearly hold her breath much longer than a human. She looked at Amelia with concern, seeing her struggle. Just when Amelia thought she couldn't go any farther, the tunnel curved upward more steeply. They followed it and broke the surface into another body of water. Amelia gasped for air, filling her lungs gratefully. They had emerged into a small pond inside another cavern. This one was different. Part natural cave, part worked stone. Ancient mining equipment lay scattered about, rusted and broken. They pulled themselves out of the pond onto a stone ledge. Amelia lay there for a moment, just breathing. Lysara watched the pond's surface anxiously. Would the hunters follow them through the underwater passage? After a few minutes with no sign of pursuit, they began to explore the new cavern. It appeared to be an old mining operation, probably from the late 1800s based on the equipment, picks, shovels, and old cart on rails that led to a passage. A way out, they followed the rails. The passage was well made, reinforced with wooden beams in places. It sloped gently upward, a good sign. They were heading toward the surface. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Amelia and Lysara had made it back to the hut just before midnight. They had seen no sign of the Void Hunters during their return journey, but both knew it was only a matter of time before they were found again. Inside the hut, they had collapsed from exhaustion. Even Lysara, with her seemingly greater stamina, had needed rest. They had slept in shifts, one keeping watch while the other slept. Now, with morning light filtering through the windows, they faced the question of what to do next. Amelia made breakfast, oatmeal for herself, fresh fruit for Lysara. As they ate, they tried once again to communicate more clearly. After their shared experience in the mine, understanding came easier between them. Using pictures and gestures, Lysara explained more about the disk and the data it contained. It was her research on a new type of energy. The same energy that powered her ship, that glowed in her skin markings, and that they had found in the strange crystals underground. This energy could be used to create or destroy. In the right hands, her people's hands, it could power worlds without pollution or waste. In the wrong hands, like those of the species that had sent the Void Hunters, it could become a terrible weapon. Lysara had fled with her research when her ship was attacked. She had chosen Earth because old records showed it was primitive, unlikely to be checked. She hadn't expected to crash or to meet a human who would help her. Now the data was hidden in the crystals. The original disk was destroyed, but the hunters would not stop searching. They would tear apart the mountain if necessary. "We need a plan," Amelia said, more to herself than to Lysara. "We can't just keep running." Lysara seemed to understand the sentiment. She drew a picture of her crashed pod. Then she drew something new, a small device that might have been inside it. She pointed to the drawing, then to the sky, and made a broadcasting motion with her hands. "A transmitter?" Amelia guessed. "To call for help?" Lysara nodded eagerly. "Yes, a way to send a message to her people. The pod had communication equipment that might still work. If they could reach it again, they might be able to call for help, but the pod was being guarded now. They had seen one of the hunters standing watch near it during their return journey the previous night. Getting to it would be difficult, perhaps impossible. As they discussed possibilities, a sound caught their attention. A distant mechanical whir growing closer. They moved to the window. Through the clear morning air, they could see one of the Void Hunters approaching the hut. It moved steadily through the deep snow, its featureless head scanning back and forth. "Time to go," Amelia said, grabbing her pack. They had prepared for this, keeping essential supplies ready. Lysara nodded, gathering her few belongings. They slipped out the back door of the hut just as the hunter reached the front. Through the trees, they ran toward the east. No destination in mind, just away from immediate danger. Behind them, they heard the sound of wood splintering. The hunter had broken into the hut. Soon it would realize they were gone and begin tracking them. They ran for almost an hour, moving as fast as the deep snow allowed. Amelia's legs burned with the effort. Even Lysara seemed to be tiring. They needed a better plan than just running. They paused in a small clearing to catch their breath. Lysara looked around, then pointed at the ground and made a digging motion. Amelia didn't understand at first. Then Lysara pointed more specifically at a spot where a fallen tree had left a depression in the snow. "You want to dig?" Amelia asked. "Hide underground?" Lysara shook her head. She held her hands out, palms down, and pushed downward sharply. Then she pointed to the sky. Understanding dawned on Amelia. Lysara wasn't suggesting they dig down. She was saying something was underground that could help them reach the sky. Something from her ship, perhaps? Or something else entirely? Amelia nodded, willing to trust the alien's instincts. They began to dig at the spot Lysara had indicated, using their hands and pieces of broken branches. The snow was deep but soft, easy to move. After a few minutes of digging, they hit something solid. Not ground, but metal. They cleared more snow away, revealing a circular metal plate about 4 feet across. It looked old, very old, with strange symbols etched into its surface. Lysara made an excited sound. She brushed snow from the symbols and traced them with her finger. They glowed faintly at her touch. She placed both hands flat on the metal plate and closed all three of her eyes in concentration. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols began to glow more brightly. The metal plate vibrated slightly. Lysara opened her eyes and looked at Amelia, clearly pleased. "What is it?" Amelia asked. She didn't expect Lysara to understand her words, but the question was clear in her expression. Lysara pointed to the sky again, then to herself, then made a circular motion with her finger. Something to do with her people? A way to contact them, perhaps? Whatever it was, they didn't have time to fully investigate. From the direction of the hut came that terrible signaling sound. The hunter had found their trail and was summoning the others. Lysara worked more urgently now, pressing different symbols on the metal plate in a specific sequence. The plate responded, the glow spreading from the symbols to cover its entire surface. Amelia kept watch, rifle ready. Through the trees, she could see the approaching hunter. It moved with that same mechanical precision, following their footprints in the snow. Behind it, two more lights were visible, the other hunters joining the chase. "Hurry," Amelia urged, though she knew Lysara couldn't understand the word. The alien woman nodded anyway, sensing the urgency. She pressed one final symbol. The metal plate split down the middle, the two halves sliding apart to reveal a dark space beneath. It wasn't a natural hole or a mine shaft. The walls were smooth metal with more glowing symbols. Steps led downward into darkness. Lysara pointed to the opening, urging Amelia to enter. Amelia hesitated only briefly before ducking into the hole. Lysara followed quickly. As soon as they were both inside, the metal plate slid closed above them, sealing them in darkness. For a moment they stood in total blackness. Then the symbols on the walls began to glow, providing soft light. They were in a small chamber with a curved ceiling. The walls were covered in the same strange writing they had seen on the metal plate. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with what looked like controls. Lysara moved to the pedestal confidently. She pressed symbols in a specific order, and the chamber hummed to life. Lights flickered on overhead. The air seemed to vibrate with energy. Amelia looked around in wonder. "What is this place?" she whispered. Lysara didn't try to explain with drawings this time. Instead, she touched a large symbol on the pedestal. A holographic image appeared in the air above it. Stars, planets, swirling galaxies. She pointed to one point of light, then to herself. "Your home?" Amelia guessed. Lysara nodded. Then she pointed to a different light, presumably Earth. She made a gesture like drawing a line between them. This was some kind of transportation device. A way to travel between worlds. It must have been left on Earth long ago by Lysara's people, perhaps during previous explorations. Above them, they heard the muffled sounds of the hunters. Heavy footsteps moved across the metal plate. They were searching for a way in. Lysara worked quickly at the controls. The holographic display changed, showing different configurations of stars. She seemed to be setting coordinates, preparing the device for use. A loud bang came from above. The hunters were trying to break through the metal plate. It held firm for now, but Amelia doubted it would withstand a determined assault for long. "Can this thing get us out of here?" Amelia asked, pointing to the controls, then to the ceiling and making a lifting motion. Lysara nodded. Yes, it could transport them away from the hunters. But then she pointed to the holographic stars, then to Amelia, and tilted her head in question. Where did Amelia want to go? It was a question Amelia hadn't expected to face. Leave Earth? Go to some alien world? The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. Another bang from above. A small crack appeared in the metal plate. The hunters were breaking through. Lysara looked at Amelia urgently. A decision had to be made now. Stay and face the hunters or leave Earth behind. Amelia thought of her life here, lonely, isolated, haunted by memories of war. What was holding her to this place? Nothing but habit and fear of change. She pointed to the star that Lysara had indicated was her homeworld. There, she said firmly. Your home. Lysara's eyes widened in surprise. Then all three curved in what might have been a smile. She pressed more symbols on the pedestal. The chamber hummed louder. Energy crackled around them. Above, the metal plate was beginning to give way. The crack widened. A mechanical hand reached through, grasping at air. Lysara pressed one final symbol. The chamber filled with brilliant light. Amelia felt a strange sensation like being pulled in all directions at once. The world around her blurred. The last thing she saw was the metal plate breaking open, a void hunter dropping into the chamber. Too late. The light intensified, blinding her. There was a feeling of incredible speed, of distance being crossed in an instant.